Hello, welcome to the lecture on Texas and the story of how Texas became part of the United States of America. So Texas, on this map, is an independent country that is broken away from Mexico. It was a province of Mexico and had not joined in with the United States. And it's the only U.S. state that existed as its own independent country before becoming part of the United States. So we're going to see, how this situation came about, and what does it mean for Mexico, for the United States, and for the Texans, and for others as well. Okay, so the story. Now, Mexico had recently got their independence from Spain around 1821. Okay, and then we'll see. Here's a lesson: be careful what you ask for. Mexico has become independent, 1821, and the area that's now Texas, it was very underpopulated, and the Mexican government is hoping to develop this region, and so they'd like people to settle in the region, and so they encourage people to settle in, and it's a system that they call the empresario system. And the way it works is there's lots of land, not enough people. Okay, we'll offer them the land, and large tracts of land would be promised to people who help to settle families in this region. And many Americans took advantage of this offer. These are Southern Americans. If we look back on the map very quickly, they would be coming in from Louisiana, Mississippi, an extension of the Cotton Belt coming in for the most part. And by the 1830s, there's 20,000 American settlers in the region. With them, 5,000 slaves that they brought with them, and the native Tejano, which is the Mexicans there. They're known as Tejano, Texans, very similar. Their populations of only 4,000. Now, the thing is about the native Mexicans that were already there, they were not really all that enthused about their own government. And like the Americans that have come in, they wouldn't mind sort of breaking off. And there's going to be some cultural differences, obviously, between these American settlers that have come in and the Mexicans. And I don't mean just the Mexicans living in Texas. I mean the Mexican government. So these two. Now, Texans. I'm using the term here. I mean the white Americans and the those Texans that were already living there. They tend to be much more Protestant, slave owners, an American identity or a Texan identity, but not a Mexican identity. Very anti-authoritarian. Against the Mexican view, Catholic country. That's an official religion. Slavery is over in Mexico, being abolished with independence. And they expect the Americans who've come in to become naturalized Mexicans, convert to Catholicism. It's the state religion, can't be anything else, and that you can't hold your slaves. And the Americans ignore these and defy the Mexican government. And it leads to violent confrontation between the two sides. Now, leaders for each side, Sam Houston will be sort of the leader of these Americans who've come in. Today, the city of Houston is named for him. And Santana, as it's pronounced, not Santa Ana, it's pronounced Santana. He's the dictator of Mexico, a military dictator, and it will be fighting between these two. Now, we don't need to know the fighting, okay? But there are some iconic battles from this. Remember the Alamo, you might have seen this. This is where many Americans were held under siege at a fort in Alamo, right here on our map. And over 130, most of them, they died in this siege. And famous people like Bowie, who was a popular frontiersman, Davy Crockett was killed in this battle. And for Americans, okay, this happened in Mexico, but they've got a lot of sympathy for this. The final battle is at San Jacinto, and the Texans, they capture Santana, and they force him, with a knife to his throat, to sign a treaty granting independence to Texas. And Mexico, he was released, and he went back and he said, that was, I was forced to sign that under duress. It doesn't count, and saying, we do not recognize Mexico as an independent country. And there's also disputes over, what is Texas? Where does its borders begin and end? Now, Andrew Jackson is president at the time. This is near the end of his term. He refused to annex or add Texas to the United States as many of the Americans in there would have liked. They would have liked to have joined up with the United States. But Jackson just says no, it's would be admitting another slave state into the Union. It's just going to create unnecessary political and sectional tension, and there's no point in doing so at this time. But many Americans, particularly Southerners, are eyeing Texas as a question: should we be adding them in? And as I said, it's the only state to have had a previous condition of servitude. So here's the new map that we've got, and we can see this important area here. This is disputed between Mexico and Texas, where the border begins. The Mexicans say that this is the border right here. There's a river right there, the Nueces River, and they say that's the border of Texas, the province of Texas, not the Republic of Texas. And the Americans saying, well, no, and under the treaty that you signed, it's this river here, which is the Rio Grande, or the Big River, and that's where the border lines. Now, what we see here is, well, a pretext and a cause for the future war with the Mexicans. The issue is not really settled yet. So the Lone Star State, right? They're a state, a country from 1835 to 1844, when they will be annexed by the United States, and we'll get to that in the next lecture. Now, for Mexico, Britain, and the United States, they're all sort of eyeing Texas, and Mexico saw Texas as a renegade province, much like China views Taiwan today. And they have plans to invade and reconquer, and they actually do make some feeble attempts at doing so. Britain's eyeing the whole situation as well and saying, hey, how can we maybe possibly benefit from this? And they see Texas as maybe being a possible ally and a buffer on American expansion as they're encroaching farther to the west. And the abolitionists have also see it as maybe making some kind of deal with the Texans where they would free their slaves and in return for trading privileges, and that it could be a place for slaves to escape to. Abolitionism is very popular in Britain, especially amongst the middle class. And the British are also kind of eyeing it as a free trade area, that it's a place where they could avoid tariffs that are placed on their goods when they come into the United States. For the United States, well, it's very divisive, with many saying it's just a ploy and a plan to expand slavery into new areas, and this issue of slavery and expansion is really starting to come in. And it will be a major issue in the election of 1844, which we will very shortly get to in the next election, an election between James Polk and, once again, Henry Clay. And the issue of Texas is a major issue in that election. All right, so that's just a short little history of Texas and how they gained their independence. And in the next lecture, we'll look at how the annexation of Texas and then that dispute over where the border is leads to war with Mexico. All right, thank you very much for listening.